I bought the house for silence, for the kind of December morning where the only sound is snow falling through pine trees and my own breath fogging the glass. I bought it with money I earned, in a name they'd never find, 3 hours up a mountain they'd never climb. 10 minutes after I posted one photo, just one, my mother texted, "Perfect! Ethan and Amanda can move in Friday." They showed up with suitcases, a crib, and a locksmith. I thought I was finally claiming my own life. Turns out, I was interrupting a plan that had my name forged all over it. This is how I learned that family isn't who shares your blood, it's who respects your boundaries. And what happens when you finally build a door strong enough to keep the wrong people out? The conference room overlooked Harborview's slate-gray harbor, fog pressing against the glass like something trying to get in. I stood at the head of the table, remote in hand, advancing to the final slide of the Tideline Outdoors campaign presentation. "In conclusion," I said, my voice crisp in the quiet room, "we didn't just meet the 12-month projected engagement targets. We crushed them in 90 days. I let the numbers hang in the air, the way you do when the data speaks louder than any speech. 400% increase in the 18 to 25 demographic, 7.2 million impressions, a social media campaign that turned mosquito netting and hiking boots into symbols of finding yourself." The clients on the screen, 3 executives from Tideline's Seattle headquarters, their faces pixelated but their expressions clear, leaned back in their chairs with the particular satisfaction of people who'd just won a bet they weren't sure they'd placed. "Ms. Richardson," the CEO said, "this is exactly what we needed. Your team has our gratitude." I didn't celebrate in meetings. I presented facts. The facts were, we'd won. My boss, Arthur, a man who wore expensive watches and believed in letting numbers do the talking, caught my eye as the call ended. He gestured toward his office with 2 fingers, not a request. I gathered my materials, aware of my team watching. Rachel, my creative director and closest friend at Redwood Meridian, gave me a subtle thumbs up. David, our data analyst, was already pulling up the metrics to send around. Jordan, our designer, mouthed "drinks later" with the enthusiasm of someone who knew exactly what that presentation meant for all of us. Arthur's office was corner positioned, all glass and leather, the kind of space that made you feel like you were inside an aquarium of ambition. He closed the door behind me with a soft click. "Maya," he said, settling into his chair, "I'm not going to waste your time with corporate platitudes." I stayed standing, waiting. The Tideline clients are ecstatic. The board is ecstatic. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a heavy cream-colored envelope. "Your standard raise is already in the system for January. This," he slid the envelope across the polished wood, "is a bonus. Effective immediately." My fingers felt strange as I picked it up, too light for what it contained. I opened it. Inside was a check made out to Maya Richardson, the number printed in stark black ink, $85,000. I stared at it until the numbers blurred slightly, my eyes refusing to believe what my brain already knew was real. This wasn't just money. This was a door opening. This was a choice I didn't know I'd have. "Thank you, Arthur," I said. My voice was steady, professional. "You earned it," he replied. "Go enjoy your weekend." I walked back to my desk in a daze, the envelope secure in my bag. My hand kept touching the leather, reassuring itself the check was still there, still real, still mine. The automatic, conditioned reflex hit me as I sat down. "Call your parents." I crushed it. What would I even say? I didn't need to guess. Just last month, my father, Robert Richardson, had texted me a link to an MBA program with the subject line, "Have you considered grad school? Your brother made excellent use of his." Ethan had his MBA. He also had a rotating series of consulting gigs that never quite stuck, and as far as I knew, our parents were still paying his car insurance at 36. My $85,000 would be nice. A good start. And then the conversation would inevitably arc toward Ethan's potential, Ethan's challenges, Ethan's needs. My phone buzzed. Rachel's face appeared on the screen, along with David and Jordan in a group text. Tacos. Now, non-negotiable. The restaurant was loud with Friday afternoon energy, all sizzling fajitas and a jukebox playing something I almost recognized. My team raised their beers in a toast. "To Maya!" David shouted over the noise. The only person who could make mosquito netting seem aspirational. We laughed. I ate. I smiled. I felt a genuine warmth spreading through my chest, the kind that comes from being seen, from being celebrated for what you actually did, rather than how useful you could be to someone else's story. But after an hour, I slipped outside. The coastal air was sharp and damp, carrying the smell of salt and rain. I leaned against the brick wall, pulled out my phone, and dialed the only number I actually wanted to call. "Eleanor Richardson's residence. This is the Queen." I smiled. "Hi, Gran." "Maya, kiddo. What's that sound? You at a party?" "Sort of. We landed a big campaign. It went really well." I told her about the metrics, the client's reaction, and then I told her about the envelope. I said the number out loud, testing how it sounded in the world. "They gave me a bonus, Gran. $85,000. There was a sharp, perfect silence on the line, not the silence of shock, but of satisfaction. "Well," Gran Eleanor said, her voice rough with something that might have been pride or vindication or both. "It's about time they noticed. I'm proud of you, kiddo. You built this all by yourself." That was it. That was the validation that mattered. Not, "How will you use it?" or "Have you thought about helping Ethan?" Just, "I'm proud of you." "Thanks, Gran. I just wanted you to know." "I always know," she said. "Now go back to your friends. Don't waste a good party." I went home instead. My condo was all glass and concrete, carefully chosen because it looked nothing like the house I grew up in. No white shutters, no precise lawn, no walls covered in someone else's achievements. Sleep was impossible. The bonus check, now deposited and showing in my savings account with an extra comma, sat there like a question I hadn't known I was allowed to ask. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed in my dark living room. I usually looked at real estate as a passive hobby, a way to dream. Minimalist lofts in the city, industrial spaces with exposed brick, places for one person to live a clean, efficient life. But the Tideline campaign had shifted something in me. All those images of granite and pine, of people finding silence in wild spaces, had gotten under my skin. On impulse, I changed the search parameters. I typed, "high timber." I'd driven through once, 3 hours from Harborview, a small town in the Elk Rest Range, more pine trees than people, the kind of place that existed at the intersection of too far to commute and exactly far enough to disappear. I scrolled past log cabins and dated ranches, and then I stopped. It was an A-frame, pure, dramatic, black. All angles, a dark triangle against a backdrop of snow and pine. The listing was new, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a massive deck that hung over nothing, listed by Elk Rest Realty for $415,000. I clicked through the photos. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a stone fireplace that climbed to a vaulted peak, wood floors that caught the light like honey. The last photo was of the deck at sunset. The valley spread below, a vast emptiness dotted with distant lights. I looked at the time, 11:47 p.m. I found the agency's website, clicked the contact number, expecting a voicemail. "Elk Rest Realty, Maya Linwood speaking." I actually jumped. "Oh, hi. My name is Maya Richardson. I'm calling about the A-frame on Kestrel Ridge. I know it's incredibly late." "City folks always call late," she said, her voice smiling. "It's when you have time to dream, right? That house is a beauty. Just came on the market this morning." "I'm in Harborview," I said. "I can't get up there for a few days." "No problem. I'm 10 minutes away. You want a video walkthrough right now?" My phone buzzed. A FaceTime request from a number I didn't recognize. I accepted. A woman's face appeared, framed by a parka hood, breath fogging in the cold night air. "Okay, Maya," she said. "Let's buy a house." The video tour should have been surreal. A stranger walking through an empty house at midnight, her phone flashlight bouncing off bare walls, but instead it felt like the most normal thing in the world. "Here we are," Maya Linwood said, her voice echoing slightly as she unlocked the front door. "Keys in." The door swung open. She hit the lights. I stopped breathing. The entire wall facing the valley was glass. The ceiling soared up to a single sharp peak, crossed with heavy rough-sawn beams. Pine light, warm and golden, poured across the wooden floors from simple overhead fixtures. "This is the main living area," Maya said, walking slowly so I could take it in. "The fireplace is stone, floor to ceiling, original to the build." She walked me through a galley kitchen with dated cherry cabinets, a downstairs bedroom with mountain views, then climbed a spiral staircase to a loft space that looked out over the entire great room. "Guest room up here, too," she said. "What's out the windows?" I asked. "The big ones. The valley. Hold on." She went back downstairs. I heard the slide of a heavy glass door. A rush of wind filled my speaker. "This," she said, stepping outside, "is the deck." The camera panned. It was dark, but I could see the vast empty space. A few lights glittered thousands of feet below. The deck was enormous, hanging over nothing, staring down into a valley of blue cold. It was isolated. It was magnificent. "It's a lot," I said, my voice small. Maya turned the camera back to her face. Snow was starting to fall, catching in her hood. "It is. It's not a house for everyone, but the bones are good. She's solid." We hung up. I sat in the silence of my gray-walled condo. I closed my eyes and asked myself the question I'd been avoiding my whole adult life. Can I picture waking up here alone and feeling safe? I thought about my childhood home in Maple Bridge, Connecticut. The 3-story colonial with precise white shutters and a lawn that looked like it had been vacuumed, not mowed. A house always full of people, always humming with Ethan's needs. A place where I felt constantly, quietly unsafe, waiting for the next eraser. The eraser. That's what I called it privately. The slow, systematic way my family made me disappear. It started small. I was 10. A Saturday morning, bright and cold. The kitchen smelled of maple syrup and melting butter. Ethan had a big lacrosse game, and my mother, Patricia, was at the stove, carefully pouring pancake batter into a massive letter E. Her focus was absolute, the way an artist studies a canvas. I sat at the kitchen island, waiting. The clock over the stove ticked, each second landing like a drop of water in silence. Finally, I slid off the stool, got bread from the pantry, made myself toast. It was dry. It scratched my throat on the way down. But I ate it, alone, while the clock ticked and my mother perfected Ethan's initial. The pattern refined itself as we got older. When I was 16, I won a regional writing prize. Real money, a check for $100 and a certificate suitable for framing. I came home glowing, the certificate in my hand like a flag. My mother was in the kitchen, sorting mail. "That's nice, dear," she said, barely glancing up. Her eyes were on an envelope from a university. "Listen, while you're here, could you proofread Ethan's college essay? He's struggling with the conclusion. You're so good with words." My prize wasn't a victory. It was a resume builder for my real job, Ethan's unpaid editor. But the first great holiday eraser, the one that broke something for good, happened my freshman year of college. I was planning to come home for Christmas. Had my train ticket booked a week early. My father, Robert, called 3 days before I was supposed to leave. "Change of plans, Maya. We're all flying down to Palm Beach to see your aunt. The flights are just too expensive to add another one this late. You understand? We'll see you at New Year's." I understood. I canceled my ticket. Spent Christmas in a deserted dorm room eating ramen and watching old movies while snow piled against my window. In January, I went to visit Gran Eleanor. She lived alone in a small house on the edge of Maple Bridge, the only member of the Richardson family who seemed to remember I existed. I was sitting at her kitchen table, drinking tea, when I saw it. Stuck to her refrigerator with a bright cartoon magnet, the Richardson family Christmas card. My parents and Ethan beaming, standing in front of the fireplace in our living room. They were wearing matching red sweaters. The photo was dated December 24th. They hadn't gone to Palm Beach at all. They just hadn't wanted me there. I looked at that card for a long time, the glossy photo, the cheerful font that said "Merry Christmas from the Richardsons," with 3 smiling faces. I didn't cry. It was too cold for that. It was just the sound of a door clicking shut, quietly, but finally. You learn to cope. You have to. My coping mechanism was hypercompetence. I built a life where I didn't need to be invited. I stopped asking. I stopped hinting. I stopped leaving room in my schedule just in case. I started planning my own Decembers with the precision of a military campaign. I booked solo trips to places where snow was a guarantee and family was an abstract concept. I bought myself the expensive bottle of wine. I learned to cook a perfect roast for one. I made my exclusion look like my choice. It's a strange thing, retraining your own senses. The smell of oranges studded with cloves, those classic pomanders, doesn't mean holiday to me. It means someone else's holiday. It smells like a party I can hear through a closed door. So I trained myself to love peppermint. I drank peppermint tea by the gallon. I bought peppermint bark and ate it directly from the tin. I kept peppermint lotion on my desk at work. It was crisp, clean, uncomplicated. It was the scent of my silence, my hard-won, solitary peace. It was the smell of a December that belonged only to me. The next morning, I didn't call a mortgage broker. I went online. For a small filing fee, I created Halcyon Pine LLC. Halcyon for the mythical bird that calms wind and waves. Pine for the trees that would guard the house. My name would not be on the deed. My name would not be on the utilities. The house would belong to the LLC. It was a fortress, a boundary made of corporate law. I opened a new business bank account, wired the entire $85,000 bonus plus the savings I'd been building for 5 years. Everything I'd carefully hoarded while my family sent me links to MBA programs and asked if I'd thought about investing in Ethan's future. At 9:01 a.m., I called Maya Linwood. "I'm making an offer," I said. She laughed. "You haven't even smelled the air up here yet." I saw everything I needed to. "I'm making an all-cash offer, 21-day close, through my LLC. The professional in her snapped to attention. "Okay, Maya, let's get it done." I submitted the offer at $405,000, $10,000 below asking. The estate selling it wanted efficiency more than every last dollar. They countered at $410,000. I looked at the email. My finger hovered over the keyboard. This was the click, the moment. I wasn't asking permission. I wasn't waiting for an invitation. I typed, accepted. My fingers buzzed as I hit send. For the next 3 weeks, I was a machine. I worked my full days at Redwood Meridian, my focus absolute. At night, I signed digital documents, reviewed inspection reports, arranged wire transfers through my LLC. I told no one, except Gran, and only because I needed someone to know I was real, that this was happening, that I wasn't dreaming. While I waited for the title search to clear, I opened the Notes app on my phone, created a new file, typed 4 lines, a creed for the life I was building. Keys mine, address private, mail P.O. box, access invite only. I read them over and over until they felt like prayer. Closing day was a Friday in late November. I signed the last document in a sterile title office in Harborview, the notary's stamp echoing in the small room. The keys, 3 new sharp-toothed brass keys, were placed in my hand. They felt impossibly heavy. I drove my sedan up the mountain that afternoon, not a moving truck. The trunk was filled with a borrowed toolkit, 2 down pillows, a new sleeping bag, and a duffel bag of clothes. In the passenger seat, a large thermos of black coffee and my phone, cued to a playlist I'd made for the 3-hour drive. I'd named it Different December, all instrumental, full of cellos and quiet pianos. It was the sound of purpose. The sun was setting by the time I pulled up the gravel drive. The A-frame was a sharp black shadow against a bruised purple sky. I got out of the car. The cold hit me immediately, a clean, high-altitude cold that smelled like pine and snow. I used one of the new keys. The click of the deadbolt sliding back echoed like a gunshot. I stood in the entryway. The house was empty, cavernous, and smelled of stale air and cedar. My footsteps boomed on the hardwood floors. I didn't try to set up a proper bed. I inflated an air mattress right in the middle of the great room, facing the wall of glass and the stone fireplace. It was so cold I could see my breath fogging in the moonlight. I found the gas valve for the fireplace. After a few tries, a line of blue flames snapped to life, licking at artificial logs. It began to heat the stone, but the glass wall sucked the warmth away faster than the fire could generate it. I lay there, fully dressed in the sleeping bag, and a strange, hollow ache settled in my chest. It was the ache of being the only adult in the room. There was no one to call for help, no one to ask about the furnace, no one to blame. The safety, the warmth, the entire physical reality of the next hour was my problem to solve. For the first time in my life, that knowledge didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a foundation. I fell asleep watching the flames, my breath slowly stopping fogging in the warming air. My life split in two. Weekdays, I was in Harborview, sharp, focused, leading meetings at Redwood Meridian. But at 5 p.m. on the dot every Friday, I was in my car, driving the 3 hours up the mountain. I'd work on the house until I couldn't keep my eyes open, sleep on the air mattress, wake at 5 a.m. and drive back to the city to start the cycle again. I was fueled by coffee and adrenaline and something fiercer, the need to make the house mine not just legally but physically, to put my hands on every surface until it knew who it belonged to. Those first weeks were a montage of pure physical labor. The kitchen cabinets were dark, dated cherry, the kind of wood that had been fashionable in 1995 and looked oppressive now. I spent an entire weekend sanding them down by hand. Sawdust worked its way into my eyelashes, my hair, under my nails. My shoulders burned. But as the dark stain gave way to pale, raw wood, I felt like I was stripping away a layer of my own skin, exposing something new. The light fixtures were next, builder-grade brass with glass globes that cast a sick yellow light. I ordered sleek black track lighting online and spent a Tuesday night on a stepladder, my arms aching, watching YouTube videos on my phone about residential wiring. When I flipped the breaker and the new warm white bulbs flooded the kitchen in clean light, I nearly wept with satisfaction. But the most important job was the locks. The old deadbolts were flimsy, the kind that came standard in vacation rentals. I ordered heavy-duty smart locks, the kind you could control with your phone, the kind that kept logs of every attempted entry. I chiseled out the door frames to fit the new reinforced strike plates, installed the keypads, set a new master code known only to me, enabled the entry log that would timestamp every single attempt to open my doors. The decisive, solid thunk of the new bolt sliding into place was the sound of absolute security. My furniture arrived in stages, a real mattress, a deep sofa, and then, deliberately, 2 identical simple wooden bed frames. I had them delivered to the 2 upstairs guest rooms. I assembled them myself, Allen wrench and small hammer, every bolt, every screw. These weren't rooms for a family I was obligated to host. These weren't shrines to someone else's achievements. I was building these beds with my own hands because I wanted to choose who got to stay here. I wanted to build a place for people who, like me, had spent too many holidays feeling like an afterthought. I made the beds with flannel sheets and thick duvets, stood in the doorway of the first finished room, and just breathed. The deck was my sanctuary. One clear, freezing night, I took 300 feet of warm white string lights and wound them around the entire railing. My fingers went numb. My breath came out in clouds. But when I was done, I plugged in the extension cord. The deck glowed in the pitch black of the mountain night. It looked like a ship floating in the dark. I stood there, mug of tea in hand, and looked down into the valley. It was a vast, dark shape, punctuated by a few distant lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. The outline on the map had shown me the valley's shape. It looked like a sleeping animal, and my home was a small, warm light watching over it. The next Saturday, I made my first real trip to the grocery store in high timber. The town was one main street nestled in the pass, flanked by mountains on both sides. The store was small, but had everything: local eggs, good coffee, bread from a bakery 2 towns over. As I was checking out, the cashier, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and weathered hands, gestured to my pile of coffee, eggs, and cleaning supplies. "You moving in somewhere?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Just closed on the A-frame up on Kestrel Ridge." Her eyes lit up with recognition. "Oh, the cedar A-frame. You're the one who got it. That place has good bones. We all wondered who'd finally give it some love." "I'm trying," I said, smiling despite myself. Well, welcome to High Timber, she said, bagging my groceries with practiced efficiency. We're glad to have you. It was a simple exchange, maybe 30 seconds. But it was the first time in my life I'd ever been welcomed to a place as myself, not as Robert and Patricia's daughter, not as Ethan's sister, not as a temporary visitor. I was the new owner. I had good bones. The house was ready for a test. I needed to know if it could hold joy or if it was just a fortress, beautiful and empty and cold. I invited Rachel, David, and Jordan up for a trial weekend. They were my work friends who'd become real friends, the ones who'd celebrated my bonus with tacos and zero jealousy. They arrived Friday night, stomping snow off their boots, arms full of board games and grocery bags. We brought the ingredients for my grandmother's chili, Rachel announced, her dark eyes sparkling. David is our designated vegetable chopper. Jordan's on cornbread duty. My kitchen, my clean, repainted, brightly lit kitchen, filled with noise. The sound of chopping, sizzling onions. 3 people arguing happily over which board game to play first. We ate the chili sitting on the floor around the coffee table because my dining table hadn't arrived yet. And then we played. Laughter, real, loud, unrestrained laughter, ricocheted off the high-beamed ceiling. It was soft, warm proof. This house could hold it. It wasn't just my quiet place. It could be our quiet place. The next morning, I sat on the deck with my coffee, watching the sunrise paint the valley in shades of gold and rose. Rachel came out wrapped in a blanket and sat beside me. We didn't talk for 10 minutes. Maya, she said finally, this place is magic. Before they left, I gave Gran Eleanor her official tour via FaceTime. I walked through the house with my phone, showing her everything. Here's the kitchen, I said, panning over the counters. I painted the cabinets, and look at this backsplash tile the old owners left. I kind of like it. Good Lord, kiddo, she crackled through the speaker. That looks like ribbon candy, the old-fashioned kind, but you're right, it's cheerful. I showed her the fireplace, the loft, and finally, the deck. I turned the camera to face the view. She whistled, low and long. Well, she said, her voice thick, you did it. You really did it. You built your own mountain. I'm proud of you, Maya. Thanks, Gran, I said, my throat tight. It's a start. That night, after my friends had gone and the house was quiet again, I felt a new kind of peace. The silence wasn't empty. It was full, charged with the memory of laughter, the warmth of people I'd chosen. I curled up on the sofa by the fire and opened my private Instagram, the one I kept for just myself and a handful of close friends. Maybe 12 followers total. I scrolled through old photos, thinking. Then I posted 3 new ones. The first, the deck, taken that morning. Fog settled in the valley below, making it look like an ocean of clouds. The sun just breaking over the far ridge. The second, a close-up of my favorite mug, full of coffee resting on the arm of the sofa, the stone of the hearth blurred warm in the background. The third, just a corner of the fireplace, flames bright and warm. I thought about the caption for a long time. Finally, I typed 5 simple words. Bought myself a quiet place. I hit post, turned off my phone, went to sleep. I turned my phone back on the next morning. The house was blissfully quiet. The scent of fresh coffee mixed with the cold pine air seeping through a window I'd cracked open. I'd slept 9 solid hours, deep, dreamless sleep. I felt, for the first time in my adult life, completely settled. Then I looked at the screen. It was glowing. A cascade of notifications, all stacked on top of each other, all from a single source. Richardson Family Updates. This was a digital graveyard, a group chat where my father occasionally posted articles about bond yields, where a distant aunt shared blurry photos of her rose bushes. It was almost always dormant. Today, it was on fire. My phone vibrated across the wooden table with the force of an angry hornet's nest. I opened it. Someone, probably my mother, had screenshotted my private Instagram post and pasted it directly into the family chat. The picture of my deck, serene at dawn. The caption, bought myself a quiet place. The messages had started at 9:47 a.m. Aunt Linda, whose house is this? It's beautiful. Cousin Amy, where did you go, Maya? Ethan, the mountains, and then the payload, the one that changed the air pressure in the room. Mom, Patricia. Exciting news, everyone. Maya bought a wonderful mountain getaway. Perfect timing, as you know. Ethan and Amanda need so much more space with the baby on the way, and their lease is up. We'll bring their nursery things up this Friday. So blessed. I read the words. Then I read them again. We'll bring their things up Friday. I almost laughed. It was that absurd. It wasn't a question. It wasn't Maya. Congratulations on your new home. What a lovely place. Would you ever consider? It was a proclamation, a done deal. My new house, the one I'd paid for with 6 months of 60-hour work weeks, the one I'd sanded and painted and secured with my own aching hands, had just been declared a crown colony of the Republic of Ethan. Before I could even process the violation, my father chimed in. Dad, Robert, it is generally prudent to consult family before making purchases of this magnitude, Maya. We need to discuss the tax implications and the liability issues. We, not you. And then the final perfect punctuation. Ethan. Like, followed 1 second later by a photograph. It was taken inside a U-Haul storage unit. In the foreground, dozens of flattened cardboard boxes stacked high, scrawled across the top one in thick black marker, nursery. I set the phone down on the table. My heart, which should have been hammering against my ribs, was unsettlingly steady. But my hands, which had been wrapped around my warm coffee mug, were suddenly, painfully cold. The heat from the ceramic couldn't seem to reach my skin. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an annexation. They'd seen my quiet place, my hard-won peace, and in the space of 10 minutes, they'd rezoned it as Ethan's annex. They were already moving in. My phone buzzed again. This time, a solo text. Not the group chat. This was the private directive. Mom, Maya, I'm so glad we're all on the same page. It's such a relief. Now, Christmas is at your place. That's settled, non-negotiable. We can't wait to see it. And don't you worry your head about a thing, sweetie. We'll cover all the groceries. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of non-negotiable. As if she were my CEO, not the mother who'd systematically forgotten me for 2 decades. The offer to cover groceries was the masterstroke. The classic Richardson maneuver. Make an outrageous, invasive demand, then soften it with a petty, insulting offer of generosity, as if paying for a bag of potatoes and a turkey gave them rights to my deed. I sat there. I thought about all the ways I could respond. The polite ways. The deferrals. I'm sorry, that doesn't really work for me. The house isn't ready for guests. Maybe we can talk about it another time. All the soft, accommodating phrases I'd been trained to use. All the phrases that meant, please walk all over me, but let me pretend I have a say. I deleted them. I typed 3 words. No. I've made other plans. I hit send. The small blue bubble sat there in the chat history, stark and final. It was the heaviest text I'd ever written. It took less than 2 minutes. My phone didn't buzz with a text. It rang. Loudly. My father's name lit up the screen. Robert Richardson. I let it ring twice. Took 1 slow breath, tasting the peppermint from my morning tea. Pressed accept. I didn't say, hi, Dad. I said, hello, Maya. His voice was the one he used for board meetings, the one that implied he was reasonable and calm, and everyone else was being hysterical and foolish. I just saw your text to your mother. She's very upset. I waited. Silence is my turf now. In my house. He continued, annoyance creeping into his voice when I didn't immediately apologize. This isn't a game. Your brother's lease is ending. You went and bought a 3-bedroom house. It's a simple alignment of resources. Be useful, Maya. Be useful. Not be kind. Not be generous. Not be family. Be useful. I was not his daughter. I was a resource. A line item. A spare bedroom in the family's expanding portfolio. I kept my voice perfectly even, matching his corporate chill. I understand Ethan's situation. However, my house is not a solution for him. No one is moving in. That is final. I added, as a courtesy, please do not come uninvited. There was a sharp, cold silence on the other end. I had never spoken to him like this, never used the word final. I heard him huff, a short, sharp sound of pure offense. He wasn't angry. He was insulted. We'll see about this, Maya, he said. The line clicked dead. He had hung up on me. My hands were no longer cold. They were moving. I went to the Richardson family updates group chat. Screenshot. I went to my mother's solo text message. Screenshot. My 3-word reply. Screenshot. I opened my call log, showing the incoming call from Robert Richardson and its duration. 2 minutes, 47 seconds. Screenshot. I opened the secure folder on my cloud drive, the one I used for work contracts. Created a new encrypted subfolder. Named it Deck Boundaries. I uploaded every single image. This wasn't a family disagreement. This was a hostile takeover, and I was building my case. My phone rang again. I flinched, assuming it was my mother ready for the emotional assault. But it was Gran Eleanor. I let out the breath I'd been holding. Hi, Gran. I just got off the phone with your mother. No preamble. Gran Eleanor never used preamble. She saw it as a waste of good time. She's in hysterics, crying. Says you bought a mansion in the mountains and you've locked her out. Says you won't even let them come for Christmas. I posted one photo last night, Gran, I said, my voice flat. I bought a small A-frame. Within an hour, they'd decided, without asking me, to move Ethan and Amanda in on Friday. Gran made a sound, a short, sharp snort of derision. Of course they did. A vacuum hates to be empty, and your family hates to see you have a single thing that isn't, in some way, for them. She paused. I heard the clink of ice in a glass. Don't let them bully you, kiddo. You owe them nothing. You don't owe them a holiday. You don't owe them a spare room. And you sure as hell don't owe them an explanation for your own life. Another pause. But I know them. They'll drive up anyway. Your parents, they think no is just a suggestion. An opening offer in a negotiation, they always win. Her voice dropped, became steel. So, let me be very clear with you, Maya. If those cars pull up your driveway, you do not open that door. You lock it. You check that it's locked, and you call the local sheriff. You tell them you have uninvited trespassers on your property. You understand me? The words sheriff and trespassers hung in the cold pine air of my living room. It was a shocking, brutal escalation, and at the same time, it was the most profound validation I had ever received. She saw it. She saw them for exactly what they were. I understand, Gran. Good, she said again. You enjoy that house. You earned it. Now send me a picture of that ribbon candy backsplash. I want to see it for myself. We hung up. I looked out the glass wall at the valley, vast and silent. The dread was still there, a cold knot in my stomach. But it wasn't panic. It was the cold, clear-headed focus of a strategist on the first day of a very long, very necessary campaign. They had made their move. Now it was my turn. Gran's words were a ballast. Call the sheriff. But I was a strategist. I knew you didn't just call the sheriff. You didn't make a panicked, hysterical call that could be dismissed as a family spat. You built the groundwork first. You prepared the field. You presented them with a set of facts so cold and hard they couldn't be argued, only acknowledged. My father's voice echoed in my head. Be useful. He was about to find out just how useful I could be, though not in the way he intended. The dread from their texts was a physical thing, a cold pressure in my chest. But my mind was already moving. I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I was still on the sofa, laptop open, scrolling through email alerts I'd set up weeks ago when I first created Halcyon Pine LLC. One caught my eye, a Zillow alert for Kestrel Ridge. I clicked it. My house wasn't listed. Of course it wasn't. So why was Zillow tracking activity? I opened a private browser window, searched for the Public Property Records database for Elk Rest County, found my parcel number, clicked viewing history. And there it was. Someone had accessed the public records for my property 6 weeks ago, October 15th, before I'd even gotten my bonus, before I'd even thought about buying a house. The IP address trace led back to Maple Bridge, Connecticut. My father had been researching my future property before I knew it existed. My hands were shaking as I opened another browser tab. Remembered something I'd never bothered to remove myself from: the family shared Dropbox. Robert had set it up years ago for important family documents. I'd been granted access once and forgotten about it. I logged in, searched. Mountain. The results made my blood turn to ice. Email chain from October 18th. Robert to Ethan, found perfect property for you. 3BR in Elk Rest Range, $425,000. Maya's bonus should cover down payment plus closing costs. She's family. She'll understand helping you start. We'll present it as Christmas gift to her. Makes it easier. Attachment. Zillow listing. My house. The A-frame I'd fallen in love with at midnight. The house I thought I'd discovered. Ethan's reply. Smart. When do we tell her? Robert. After she gets the bonus. Let her think it was her idea. Patricia will handle the emotional side. I kept scrolling, found a spreadsheet titled E. A House Budget. Down payment. Maya's bonus. $85,000. Monthly carrying costs. Split with M. Utilities. M. Handles. Insurance. Family policy. Add E plus A as residence. Property tax. M. Responsible. Owner of record. They had built a budget. For my house. With my money. Where I paid for everything, and they lived there. I found one more document. A hand-drawn sketch. Architectural style. Someone, Robert probably, who'd done drafting in college, had drawn the A-frame's layout. Rooms were labeled master bedroom, E plus a second bedroom, nursery, third bedroom, office/storage, great room, shared space. They had assigned rooms in a house they didn't own, in a house I hadn't even seen yet. The date on the file, October 15th, 3 days after I'd won the Tideline account, before the presentation, before the bonus was even official. They'd been watching my success, planning to harvest it. I sat there in the dark, the laptop screen the only light, and felt something shift inside me. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't, oh, Maya has a house, maybe Ethan could use it. This was premeditated, calculated, strategic. They'd picked out my house, planned the budget with my money, assigned the rooms for their life. And when I'd accidentally bought the same house they'd selected for me, when I'd independently fallen in love with the same A-frame they'd been tracking, they'd simply accelerated their timeline. We'll bring their things Friday, because in their minds, I'd already agreed. The second I bought that house, I'd completed my part of a transaction I'd never consented to. I grabbed my phone, took photos of every email, every spreadsheet, every sketch, added them to the Deck Boundaries folder. The rage that filled me wasn't hot. It was cold, clarifying, steel. At 7 a.m., as the sun started to turn the valley from black to gray, I opened my laptop again. Searched. High Timber Property Litigation Attorney. The first result was a firm called Hayes Legal Solutions. The website was minimalist, all gray and black with sharp high-resolution photos of granite and ice. The tagline, clarity, strategy, resolution. The head attorney, Victoria Hayes. Her photo showed a woman in her mid-40s, dark hair pulled back, wearing a black blazer. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes were sharp. She looked like someone who'd heard every excuse and believed none of them. I called the office at 9 a.m. Hayes Legal Solutions, this is Victoria Hayes. No receptionist. She'd answered herself. Ms. Hayes, my name is Maya Richardson. I'm the new owner of the property at Kestrel Ridge under the LLC Halcyon Pine. I need a 1-hour consultation regarding trespass and occupancy rights. I'm available today. There was quiet tapping of a keyboard. I can see you at 2 p.m. Bring your LLC operating agreement and your deed. The line clicked. I spent the next 4 hours organizing the Deck Boundaries folder, printed everything, the group chat texts, my mother's non-negotiable demand, the photo Ethan had sent of the boxes marked nursery. Then I printed the new evidence, the blueprint email chain, the property search history, the budget spreadsheet with my name assigned to every expense and their names assigned to every room. I put them in a crisp black folder. Victoria Hayes's office was on the main street of high timber above a high-end outdoor gear shop. The entrance was unmarked except for a small brass plaque. Hayes Legal, second floor. The office itself was silent. The walls were deep charcoal. No family photos, no diplomas on display. Just two large abstract paintings of winter forests, all white birch and shadow. Victoria Hayes was exactly like her photograph, but more present. She wore a dark wool dress and looked at me with the analytical gaze of someone assessing a complex problem. She didn't shake my hand. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Ms. Richardson, you have a property issue." "I have a family issue that's attempting to become a property issue," I said. I placed the black folder on her polished desk. "My family believes they're moving into my new home on Friday. I do not want them there." I laid it out, the history of erasure told in 5 concise minutes. The purchase of the house, the Instagram post, the deluge of texts. Then I opened the folder, showed her the blueprint, the email chain, the spreadsheet, the sketch with room assignments. "They planned this before I even got my bonus," I said. "They picked out this exact house. They built a budget using my money. They were just waiting for me to execute their plan." Victoria read every single screenshot, every email, every document. Her expression did not change. She didn't gasp or sigh or offer sympathy. She was a scientist examining data. When she finished, she looked up at me. Her gaze was analytical and, I thought, slightly impressed. "This," she said, tapping the blueprint email, "is premeditation. This," she tapped the spreadsheet, "is conspiracy to commit fraud. And this," she tapped my mother's text, "is attempted conversion of property." She leaned back in her chair. "This is not an uncommon story up here, Ms. Richardson. Money, entitlement, and second homes, it's a combustible mix. But this level of planning," she tapped the blueprint again, "this is unusual. Most families are opportunistic. Yours is organized." I felt a sudden, dizzying wave of relief, the relief of being seen. She hadn't said, "But it's your family." She hadn't suggested mediation or compromise. She had diagnosed the threat with surgical precision. "You have 3 things in your favor," Victoria continued. "First, you were incredibly smart to purchase under an LLC. Halcyon Pine owns the house. You are merely its managing member. This provides crucial legal distance." She ticked off on her fingers. "Second, you have documentation of their intent before your purchase. This blueprint email is gold. It shows they viewed you as a funding source, not a family member. Any court would see this as exploitative. Third, you've given them a clear written notice of no. Your position is unambiguous. You didn't waffle. You didn't leave room for interpretation." "What's the next step?" I asked. Victoria pulled a legal pad toward her. "We're going to file a formal no trespass letter with the county sheriff's office, effective immediately. It will name Robert Richardson, Patricia Richardson, and Ethan Richardson. It will be recorded against your parcel number." She looked up at me. "This way, if you do have to call 911, you're not a hysterical daughter reporting a family disagreement. You're the representative of an LLC reporting a violation of a recorded legal notice. The police hate ambiguity. We're going to remove it." For the next hour, we built the fortress. We drafted the letter. It was polite, formal, and terrifying. To Elkrest County Sheriff's Office. Formal no trespass notice. Parcel number 4782-19-003. Please be advised that the following individuals are hereby notified that they are not permitted on the property located at address redacted. Kestrel Ridge, legally owned by Halcyon Pine LLC. 1. Robert James Richardson, D.O.B. redacted. 2. Patricia Ann Richardson, D.O.B. redacted. 3. Ethan Robert Richardson, D.O.B. redacted. Any presence of the above-named individuals on the property shall be considered criminal trespass under state law. This notice is formal, recorded, and enforceable. Signed, Maya Richardson, Managing Member, Halcyon Pine, LLC. C. I'll have this filed and recorded by 4 p.m. today, Victoria said, sliding the letter into a file. A copy will be sent to the sheriff's duty desk. It goes into the system. If they show up, you call 911, reference this notice, and units will respond accordingly. What else? I asked. Victoria looked at me for a long moment. You're a strategist, correct? That's your profession? Brand strategy, yes. Then you know the next step is reinforcing your perimeter. I left her office an hour later, my hands full of copies, my mind numb but clear. I didn't drive back to the house immediately. I drove to a hardware store in the next town over. Bought a new heavy-duty strike plate and a box of 3-inch wood screws, the kind that would bite past the door frame and into the wall studs themselves. Back at the A-frame, I began my own practical playbook. First, the cameras. I'd installed basic exterior cameras when I first bought the place. Now I logged into the admin panel, angled the driveway camera to get a perfect clear shot of the gravel approach and any license plates. Angled the porch camera to capture every inch of the front door and the faces of anyone who approached. Enabled audio recording on both. Second, the entry log. I downloaded the app that synced with my smart locks, giving me a second-by-second record of every code attempted, every failed entry, every successful unlock. I rotated my own master code, just in case. Third, documentation. I opened a new document on my laptop, typed, Guest Policy, Halcyon Pine, LLC1. All guests are permitted by written invitation only with specific dates. 2. No invitation shall be considered standing or open-ended. 3. No subletting, cohabitating, or mail forwarding is permitted. 4. No exceptions for pets, extended family, or emergencies. 5. Any attempt to access the property without an authorized code or key will be logged and reported to authorities. It was cold. Corporate. Perfect. I printed it on heavy cream-colored cardstock. Went to the front entry closet, the one where an invited guest might hang their coat, and posted it on the inside of the door. My defenses were layered now. Layer 1, the LLC. The deed was private, shielded. My utilities were all under the name Halcyon Pine. My mail was routed to a private P.O. box in High Timber. This was my corporate armor. Layer 2, physical defenses. Smart locks, reinforced doors. Cameras logging everything. Layer 3, legal defense. The no trespass letter filed and waiting. Now, all that was left was the declaration. I sat at my new dining table, the one I'd assembled myself, and remembered Victoria's final piece of advice as I'd stood to leave her office. They will call you, she'd said. They will cry. They will threaten. They will tell you that you're destroying the family. You'll be tempted to argue with them, to defend yourself, to explain. She'd looked at me with those sharp, dark eyes. That is the trap. That's where they can claim confusion, or a misunderstanding, or that you lost it. You must not engage. You are the managing member of a corporation. This is a business decision. From now on, you communicate with facts, not feelings. I opened my email, started a new message, typed in 3 addresses: Robert Richardson, Patricia Richardson, Ethan Richardson. In the BCC field, I typed victoria.hayes@hayeslegal.com. The subject line, Christmas plans, Kestrel Ridge property. I wrote, Dear Robert, Patricia, and Ethan, thank you for your excitement regarding my new property. To clarify the situation and ensure there is no misunderstanding, the house at Kestrel Ridge is not available for visits or hosting this holiday season. It is a private residence owned by Halcyon Pine LLC and is not open for guests. It is not available for anyone to move into temporarily or permanently. I have already made other private plans for the Christmas holiday. Please do not travel to High Timber, as I will be unable to accommodate you. Any attempts to access the property will be denied. I trust this clarifies the situation. I did not write Love Maya. I wrote, Sincerely, Maya Richardson, Managing Member, Halcyon Pine, LLC. I hit send. The small blue text sat there in my sent folder, final and clean. It was the heaviest email I'd ever written. The silence that followed was immediate and profound. My phone, which had been vibrating with their demands and declarations, went completely dead. The group chat became a tomb. It was the sound of the surf pulling all the way back, gathering its strength before the wave. I stood up, walked to the side door in the kitchen, the one I used most often. I got my drill in the small box from the hardware store. I unscrewed the laughably cheap half-inch screws that held the thin brass strike plate in place, fitted the new heavy-gauge steel plate into the space I'd chiseled out, took the new 3-inch screws, positioned the first one, drove it into the wood. It bit past the trim, past the jamb, and sank deep into the 2x4 stud that framed the house itself. I drove in the other two. The plate was now anchored into the bones of the structure. I closed the door, threw the deadbolt. It made a tiny, decisive final click. It was the sound of no, forged in steel. December 23rd, 7:42 p.m. I was in the great room by the fire, a book open in my lap. The house was silent, warm, and secure. Outside, the first real snow of the season was beginning to fall. Soft, heavy flakes that caught the light from the deck. My phone, resting on the side table, buzzed once, not a text. A notification from the camera app. Motion detected. Driveway. My heart didn't leap. It just began to beat. A slow, heavy, deliberate rhythm. I set my book down, opened the app. The image was grainy, black and white from the infrared, but perfectly clear. 2 headlights slicing through the dark, creeping up my gravel drive. They weren't moving fast. They were moving with purpose. A large, dark SUV. It stopped 20 feet from the house. The doors opened. My mother, Patricia, emerged from the passenger side, pulling her coat tight against the cold. My father, Robert, got out of the driver's seat, standing stiffly, surveying the house as if it were a hostile corporate headquarters he'd been sent to acquire. From the back seat, Ethan unfolded himself, already reaching for something in the cargo area. And then Amanda, very pregnant, moving with the slow, pained caution of her 3rd trimester. She looked exhausted, scared. Ethan set suitcases on the gravel, 4 of them. Then he reached back into the SUV and pulled out a collapsible crib, snapping it open with a practiced flick of his wrist. And then a 5th person got out. A man in a work jacket I didn't recognize. He was carrying a long metal toolbox. He looked cold. He looked embarrassed. They'd brought a locksmith. They began walking toward my front porch. My phone pinged again. Motion detected, porch. I watched them, the 4 of them, plus the locksmith, approach my door. My family had arrived with suitcases, a crib, and, insanely, a man they'd hired to break into my home. The dark comedy of it was so bleak it was almost brilliant. They hadn't just ignored my no. They'd planned, budgeted, and executed a strategy to overcome it. The doorbell chimed. The sharp digital sound echoed in the warm, quiet room. I didn't get up. I didn't go to the door. I pressed the talk icon on the camera app. My voice, amplified by the tiny speaker on the porch, cut through the freezing night air. It sounded metallic and inhuman. "This is private property. Your presence is not authorized. Please leave." My mother flinched. She looked around, confused, before realizing the voice was coming from the doorbell itself. She rushed the camera, her face looming large, distorted by the wide-angle lens. Her voice was a fountain of sugary concern. "Maya, honey, open up. It's freezing out here. Don't be silly. We drove for hours. We brought a smoked ham." A ham, as if it were a password, as if it were the price of admission. I watched, silent. The locksmith looked at my father, who gestured impatiently at the door. "It's the smart lock. The black one." The locksmith sighed, knelt, and began to unpack his tools. He pulled out a drill. That was it. That was the line. My fingers were cold, but perfectly steady. I went to my phone's contact list, pressed the entry for the High Timber Sheriff's non-emergency line. "County Dispatch." The voice was calm, a little bored. "Hello," I said, my own voice low and clear. "My name is Maya Richardson. I am the managing member of Halcyon Pine, LLC. Located at Kestrel Ridge, parcel number 4782-19-003. I am reporting an active trespass. I paused. I have a filed no trespass letter, record number 309B, for this parcel. The individuals named in that letter, Robert Richardson, Patricia Richardson, and Ethan Richardson, are currently on my front porch. I paused again, then delivered the critical fact. They have brought a locksmith. He is currently attempting to drill my deadbolt. There was a sharp change in the dispatcher's tone. Ma'am, they are actively attempting to gain entry to your home? Yes. Are you safe inside the house? I am safe, I said. The doors are reinforced, but they are trespassing and attempting to destroy property to gain access. A patrol unit is en route. Your parcel number is on file with the no trespass order. Please stay inside and do not engage with them. Do you understand? I understand. I hung up. I went back to the camera app. The locksmith was working, his drill whining against the reinforced metal jamb I'd installed. It wasn't budging. The 3-inch screws I'd driven into the wall studs held firm. Ethan, all pent-up frustration and entitlement, stepped forward. He banged his fist hard on the solid wood doorframe. The sound vibrated through the floor of my house, a dull physical thud. Maya, he yelled, stop being dramatic. We're here. The plan is set. Just open the door. I saw Amanda wince, a sharp, pained tightening of her face. She was standing back by the suitcases, one hand on her belly, the other clutching her coat. She whispered something, her voice too low for the microphone to catch, but her expression was clear. Please stop. Just stop. Ethan ignored her. He was about to hit the door again when the world lit up in red and blue. A patrol car crunched over the gravel, its headlights pinning the entire group in a harsh white glare. My family froze. They looked like actors caught on stage when the wrong curtain went up. The locksmith dropped his drill. A deputy stepped out of the car. He was tall, his hat pulled low. He did not look amused. He walked calmly onto the porch. Good evening, folks, his voice boomed. Quite a party. What seems to be the problem here? My mother, Patricia, instantly transformed. The worried, freezing traveler vanished. In her place stood the matriarch, the victim, her hands clasped at her chest in a perfect gesture of maternal distress. Oh, thank goodness, officer, miss. Her voice was breathless with manufactured relief. This is all a terrible, terrible misunderstanding. This is our daughter's house. We've driven all this way for Christmas. And she's not well. She's locked herself in. We're just trying to get to her. We're so worried. The deputy looked at my mother. He looked at the suitcases lined up on the porch like evidence at a crime scene. He looked at the crib, still assembled, its white bars gleaming in the porch light. He looked at the locksmith's tools scattered across the wooden planks. I see, he said, his tone flat. I'm going to need to see identification from all of you, please. My father, Robert, stiffened, drew himself up to his full height, the posture he used in boardrooms when he was about to pull rank. I don't see why that's necessary, officer. This is a family matter. The deputy didn't blink. I see a property matter, sir. Identification. Now. One by one, they handed over their driver's licenses. The deputy examined each one under his flashlight, his face impassive. Robert Richardson, Patricia Richardson, Ethan Richardson. He looked at Amanda, who stood apart from the group, her face pale. And you, ma'am? Amanda Richardson, she whispered, her eyes wide and glassy. The deputy nodded slowly. He pulled a small clipboard from under his arm and consulted it. Well, he said, I've got good news and bad news. He turned his flashlight onto the paper on his clipboard. The good news is I know exactly what's going on here. The bad news is this property is not owned by Maya Richardson. It is owned by a corporation, Halcyon Pine LLC, and I have a legally filed recorded no trespass letter from the LLC's counsel, specifically barring Robert, Patricia, and Ethan Richardson from this parcel. The silence on the porch was absolute. My mother's face collapsed like a building losing its supports. The performance was over. An LLC? What are you? That's just paperwork. I am her mother. The deputy's voice remained devoid of sympathy. "Ma'am, there is no such thing as family rights when it comes to criminal trespass. This is private property. You were all formally warned not to come here." He turned to the locksmith. "And you. Were you aware that these individuals were not the owners of this property and had no legal right to be here?" The locksmith was already packing his toolbox, throwing tools in so fast they clattered against each other. "No, sir. He gestured sharply at my father. Told me it was his daughter's house, that she was indisposed and they were locked out. I'm done. I'm leaving." He grabbed his box and practically ran to his van, engine starting before he'd even closed the door properly. My father stepped forward, his voice dropping to a low growl, the tone he used when he was about to threaten legal action. "This is completely outrageous. This is harassment. You will be hearing from our lawyers." The deputy did not blink, did not step back. "That is your right, sir. You can call any lawyer you like, but you'll be calling them from a hotel, because tonight you are leaving this property." He reached back into his patrol car and pulled out a large, pre-prepared manila envelope. "Here is your copy of the recorded notice. It explains in detail that if you return to this property at any time, for any reason, you will be arrested. If you attempt to contact the owner tonight, it may be considered harassment under state law." He held the envelope out, not to my father specifically, but to all of them. "So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to stand here and watch you load your suitcases and your crib back into your vehicle, and then you are going to leave, and you are not coming back." It was checkmate. Ethan looked like he was vibrating with silent rage, but he said nothing. Robert snatched the envelope from the deputy's hand, his jaw working. Patricia looked small and cold, and for the first time in my life, completely powerless. Wordlessly, they picked up their luggage. Ethan grabbed the crib and folded it with sharp, angry movements. They loaded the SUV, intense, furious silence, their breath fogging in the cold air. The deputy stood with his arms crossed, watching every movement. They got in. Doors slammed, 4 hollow thuds that echoed across the mountain. The SUV's engine roared to life. The taillights, red and angry, stuttered down the gravel drive and disappeared onto the main road, swallowed by the dark and the falling snow. The deputy got back into his patrol car and followed them at a distance, ensuring they were leaving the mountain entirely. I stood in the center of my living room. The silence that rushed back in was massive, almost physical. The only sound was the soft crackle of the fire. I looked at my hands. They were shaking. The adrenaline, the cold, steady courage I'd been running on for days, drained out of me all at once, leaving my knees weak and my breath uneven. I gripped the back of the sofa to hold myself up. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding since I was 10 years old. Sitting at that kitchen island, watching my mother make pancakes shaped like someone else's initial. I looked out the great glass wall. It was dark. The valley was a pool of black. And then a single perfect snowflake drifted past the deck light. Then another, and another. The snow was starting in earnest now, covering everything. My knees were shaking, but I was holding. The house had held. Christmas morning was coming. I woke to a world made new. The snow had fallen all night, heavy and silent. It was at least a foot deep, blanketing the deck, the driveway, the entire valley in flawless, glittering white. The A-frame felt like a snow globe, insulated and impossibly quiet. The events of the night before felt distant, muffled by the storm. By 10 a.m., the house was no longer quiet. It was full. Rachel, David, and Jordan had driven up early that morning, their car loaded with presents and a cooler full of food. "We were not letting you be alone after that," Rachel had said, hugging me hard at the door, her cold hands gripping my shoulders. "And we didn't trust your family not to come back for round 2. "They won't," I said, feeling the solidness of the door frame, the weight of the locks. "It's handled." The best surprise came at 11 o'clock. A polite knock at the door. Real, expected, welcomed. I checked the camera out of habit and saw my neighbors, Tom and Lisa from the blue house down the ridge. They were holding a warm casserole dish covered in foil. "Merry Christmas," Lisa said when I opened the door, snow dusting her hat. "We figured you might be snowed in. We brought cinnamon rolls, the good kind, way too much icing." And just like that, my house filled with chosen family. We ate cinnamon rolls standing in the kitchen, coffee brewing in endless pots. We put on a playlist of instrumental carols, the kind without words, just cellos and bells. We sat by the fire while snow fell softly outside the great glass wall, and we talked. We exchanged small, thoughtful gifts. Jordan gave me a rare, beautifully illustrated book on mountain wildflowers. David gave me a framed, stylized map of the Elk Rest Range with a tiny gold star over high timber. Rachel gave me a ridiculously soft cashmere blanket in deep forest green. My gift to them was simpler, but it meant more. "The guest rooms are yours," I said. "Whenever you need to get away, you have the code. You don't ever have to ask. This is your place, too." Rachel's eyes got bright. "Maya!" "I mean it. I built those beds for people I choose, and I choose you." It was the easiest, warmest, most peaceful Christmas of my life. We were rinsing mugs in the kitchen around 2 p.m., the dishwasher humming, when Rachel, scrolling on her phone, paused. Her expression changed. Maya," she said, her voice careful. "You should probably see this." "What is it?" "Your mom? She posted on Facebook about an hour ago." Rachel angled her phone toward me. "She's prolific." I dried my hands on a dish towel and took the phone. My mother's profile picture, a professionally lit photo of her and my father at some charity gala, smiled at me with practiced warmth. Her post was public. "Feeling so blessed this Christmas morning. After so many challenges, we are thrilled to announce a true Christmas miracle. Ethan and Amanda have found the perfect, safe place to start their family. We've been working on it for weeks, and we're so grateful it's all coming together for them. Moving day is just around the corner." Here's a peek at the nursery mood board they've been working on. Below the text was a slick, Pinterest-style image. It showed a crib, a changing table, and a color palette of soft blues and grays. Very tasteful. Very aspirational. And in the corner, tagged with a location pin that was blurred but easily guessable. "High timber, Elk Rest Range." It was a dog whistle. The comments were already cascading. A Christmas miracle indeed. So happy for them. What a beautiful place to raise a baby. They deserve it. Can't wait for the moving day pictures. So exciting. Your family is so blessed, Patricia. My blood, which had been warm and slow all morning, turned to ice water. This was not a retreat. This was a flanking maneuver. They had been turned away at the door, ejected by law enforcement. So now they were building a public narrative, a narrative in which they were the heroes, the benevolent parents securing a safe place for their grandchild, a narrative in which my house was not mine, but theirs, a coming together for the family. "She's creating a social media paper trail," I said quietly, my voice flat. I handed the phone back to Rachel. Before Rachel could respond, my phone buzzed on the counter. Not a text, a direct message on Instagram, from a name I hadn't seen in years. Jessica Morgan, a former classmate from Maple Bridge. I opened it. "Hey, Maya." Weird question. "I saw your post about the mountain house. It looks amazing. Congrats. Just wanted to let you know. I was at my parents' club back in Connecticut last week, and I overheard your dad talking at the bar. He was asking around for anyone who knew a good mountain property management service in the Elk Rest area. He was specifically using your parcel number. He was telling people his kids had a new property and he needed someone to manage the tenants and upkeep. It was weird. Anyway, Merry Christmas. Hope you're well." I read the message twice. Manage the tenants, upkeep, his kids, plural. I looked up at my friends. They'd all stopped what they were doing, watching me. They could see my face changing. "David," I said, my voice sharp. "You're the data guy. What am I looking at?" David, ever practical, set his coffee mug down. He took my phone, read the DM, then pulled up my mother's Facebook post on his own device. He was silent for a full minute, just processing, his analyst brain running scenarios. "Okay," he said finally, handing my phone back. "Here's what you're looking at. The attack on the 23rd was Phase 1, physical occupation. It failed. They've pivoted to Phase 2, administrative occupation. He ticked off on his fingers. The Facebook post creates social expectation of their tenancy. It's soft propaganda. In the court of public opinion, they're already living there. Second, the property management inquiries. Your dad is trying to find a legal or quasi-legal way to install a third party, someone who could give him access and control, claiming the owners are disorganized or absent. He looked at me seriously. They're trying to build a case that you are not in control of the property and that they are the responsible parties. If they can create enough administrative paper trail, utility calls, property management contracts, mail forwarding, they can potentially claim some form of tenancy or equitable interest. A cold, terrible logic clicked into place. This was a strategy. This was a campaign, just like one I would run at work for a difficult client. David's right, I said, my mind already racing. If they can create a paper trail, they can try to claim residency or tenant rights. They can have their mail sent here. They can register vehicles at this address. They can... On pure instinct, I grabbed my laptop from where I'd left it charging by the sofa. I didn't just go to the post office website. I went to the county clerk's public filings portal, the same one Victoria and I had used for the no trespass order. I logged into my account, the one tied to my P.O. box and my parcel number. I clicked through the public records, utility filings, address registries, and there it was. Change of address request. Status. Pending verification. From 47 Maple Lane, Maplebridge, C. T2 P.O. Box 428. High Timber. Parcel number 4782-19-003. Requested by Ethan Richardson and Amanda Richardson. Filed December 21st. They had done it 2 days before they drove up here. Before they brought the locksmith. Before any of it. They had already filed paperwork to legally attach themselves to my address. If that verification had gone through, they could have used it to get driver's licenses with this address. Register their car here. Claim residency. Establish tenancy. The locksmith and the smoked ham weren't the real plan. They were just the shock and awe opening. This administrative infiltration was the real invasion. My hands were shaking again, but this time with cold, clear fury. I screenshotted the Facebook post, screenshotted the congratulatory comments, screenshotted Jessica's DM, screenshotted the pending change of address form, its status glowing red. Pending. I opened a new email to Victoria Hayes. Victoria, they've pivoted. They are attempting to establish residency through mail fraud and are building a public narrative of tenancy via social media. See attached screenshots. What is our next move? I attached everything and hit send. My phone buzzed not 60 seconds later. It was a reply from Victoria. Her autoresponder was on for the holiday, but this was a direct manual reply. 2 sentences. Do not engage. Do not post, text, or call. This is no longer a family dispute. It is attempted fraud. Meet me at my office Tuesday 9 a.m. Tuesday. I had to wait an entire day. My friends were watching me, their faces a mixture of concern and disbelief. They're insane, Jordan whispered, shaking his head. This is full-on criminal. It's just control, I said, the words forming slowly in my throat. I looked around the room, at the warm fire, the half-eaten cinnamon rolls, the people who had driven hours through snow to make sure I wasn't alone. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from a different number, a number I knew by heart. Gran Eleanor. Proud of you for not opening that door, kiddo. I closed my laptop, picked up the dirty coffee mugs from the counter, walked to the sink and turned on the hot water, steam rising to meet my face. This was never about Christmas. It was never about a forgotten invitation or a place to stay. It was about control, about an entire family system built on the idea that my time, my money, my successes, and now my home were not actually mine. They were just resources waiting to be allocated to Ethan. I had bought a house, and in doing so, I had committed the one unforgivable sin. I had created a boundary. And they, in turn, were showing me that tradition was just the prettiest word for control. I washed the mugs one by one, watching the snow continue to fall outside the window. Tuesday, 9 a.m. The game was on. The Monday before my Tuesday meeting with Victoria was the longest day of my life. I stayed at the A-frame, working remotely, my laptop open on the dining table. My phone sat beside me, silent. The silence was a coiled spring. My family was regrouping. I knew it as a strategist. The first assault had failed. They were planning something more sophisticated. My Christmas Day email to Victoria, with its payload of screenshots showing their Phase 2 administrative attack, was the opening shot in a new, quieter war. But the silence from their end was worse than the noise had been. No texts, no calls, no new Facebook posts from my mother. They had gone dark. That, more than anything, terrified me. I drove down to High Timber Tuesday morning at 8:30. The roads were clear, the plows had been through, but the valley was still blanketed in white. The town looked like a postcard. I walked into Victoria Hayes's office at 8:59 a.m. She was already at her desk, a stack of files in front of her. The room felt colder than usual, or maybe that was just the look on her face. "Maya," she said, not a greeting, an acknowledgement. She gestured to the chair. "Sit." I sat. "I received your email on Christmas," Victoria said without preamble. "You were right to be concerned. They are escalating precisely as predicted." I placed my laptop bag on the floor, my hands folded in my lap. Waiting. Victoria turned her monitor to face me. "While you were dealing with the social media front, your father was busy on the legal one," she clicked. A document filled the screen. It was a scanned PDF, time-stamped December 26th, 9:07 a.m. It looked like something typed on a home computer, a simple one-page Word document, but the header read, "Informal Family Tenancy Agreement." My blood didn't just run cold. It stopped. The letter was dated 2 weeks ago, December 10th, before the confrontation on my porch. It was a simple, badly written agreement stating that Halcyon Pine, LLC, in consideration of family unity and support, grants full-time indefinite tenancy to Ethan Richardson and Amanda Richardson for the property at Kestrel Ridge, High Timber. And at the bottom, in the signature line for the LLC's managing member, was a name, Maya M. Richardson. The signature was looping, unfamiliar, not my handwriting at all. "That," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "is not my signature." "I didn't imagine it was," Victoria said, her voice dry. "It's a forgery, and a clumsy one. The S in Stuart loops, and yours is sharp and vertical, based on your LLC documents. But that's not the best part." She zoomed in on the signature. "They signed it Maya M. Richardson. What's your middle initial?" "I don't have one," I said slowly. "My name is just Maya Richardson." "Exactly." Victoria's voice was sharp. "They invented a middle initial. They attempted to create a legal person, Maya M. Richardson, who could consent to their invasion. It's a classic desperate move. It's also felony fraud." I stared at the screen, at the name that was mine, but not mine. They hadn't just tried to break into my house. They were trying to replace me. They were creating a puppet version of me on paper, a version who was cooperative, who understood her role, who would sign her life away to be useful. "So what does this do?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Legally?" "Legally, it's garbage," Victoria said flatly. "It wouldn't hold up in any court. But it's not for a judge. It's for a utility company. It's for the post office. It's a piece of proof they can show someone at a counter to say, 'See, we're allowed to be here.' They're building their stack of documents." She clicked to a new window. "Which brings me to this. Your father's property management inquiries. I put a high priority alert on your LLC and your parcel number with all state and county level agencies. We got 2 pings yesterday." She pulled up the first one. Department of Motor Vehicles, Registration Inquiry. Date, December 27th. Applicant, Ethan Richardson. Vehicle, 2024 Subaru. Outback requested registration address. My Kestrel Ridge address. Status, rejected. Property owner mismatch. He tried to register his car to your house, Victoria said. What? He attempted to register his vehicle using your mountain address as his primary residence. The paperwork lists his contact information, but your Kestrel Ridge address. It was flagged by the system and rejected because the property owner, Halcyon Pine LLC, didn't match the applicant, and the family tenancy agreement they provided, she gestured to the forgery, wasn't a valid lease. She pulled up the second ping. Elkrest County Utilities, Customer Service Inquiry. Log date, December 26th, December 27th. Caller, Robert Richardson. Phone number. Request. Add as secondary responsible party to account number 4782-003. Reason given. Daughter is overwhelmed. I'm helping manage her affairs and pay bills. Need my name on the account. Status. Denied. No LLC authorization provided I felt sick. He tried to get his name on my utility account, I said. He tried to get control, Victoria corrected. He wanted his name added as a secondary responsible party. That would give him access to billing, usage history, and potentially the ability to make changes. He told the customer service rep that you, the owner, were overwhelmed and he was stepping in to help manage. It was the same story, the same narrative they'd been building since I was 10 years old. Maya can't handle it. Maya's not capable. Maya needs help. We, the adults, need to step in and manage. He wasn't just trying to get a key. He was trying to build a paper trail that proved I was incompetent. He was denied, Victoria continued, because he didn't have the LLC's federal tax ID number or your corporate password. But you see the pattern now, don't you? Physical occupation failed. Digital occupation, mail fraud, was blocked. So now it's administrative siege. Death by 1,000 small official requests, each one building the case that they are the real stakeholders and you are merely the name on the paperwork. I looked at her. So what do we do? How do we fight this? Victoria leaned back in her chair and cracked her knuckles, the first human, non-legal gesture I'd ever seen her make. We stop defending, she said, and we go on the offense. For the next hour, Victoria and I built the counterattack. I spent yesterday drafting, she said, turning back to her monitor. First, a formal cease and desist. This isn't a polite email, Maya. This is a 20-page legal document that I'm sending via certified mail, signature required to Robert, Patricia, and Ethan individually. She pulled up the document. It was dense with legal language, but the structure was clear. It outlined in forensic detail the attempted mail fraud, change of address, the attempted vehicle registration fraud, the forgery of the tenancy agreement, the trespass on December 23rd, date, time, police report number, the attempted property damage, locksmith, drill, the harassment via social media and third-party property management inquiries. It informs them, Victoria said, that any further attempt at contact, physical, digital, or through third parties, will be met with immediate legal action, including but not limited to restraining orders, criminal fraud charges, and civil damages. She clicked to the next document. Second, notices of potential fraud. These go out today to the postmaster in High Timber, the DM5, the county registrar, and every utility company, power, water, internet, gas. It alerts them that your accounts are under active fraudulent attack. It freezes all changes. It requires a new verbal password, known only to you and me, for any modifications to any account. She looked at me. We are walling them out of the infrastructure. Every single access point gets locked down. She clicked again. Third, and this is my favorite, a certified warning to any attorney who may be representing them. Your father mentioned lawyers to the deputy. Your classmate overheard him inquiring about property managers. He's representing himself or representing them as having a legal right to this property. She smiled, but it was the smile of a shark. This letter informs any potential attorney that his clients are engaging in documented criminal fraud and that any further legal action on their behalf will be viewed as complicity. It's a trap. It forces them to either hire a lawyer who will now be on notice and ethically bound to refuse fraudulent claims, or to admit they were lying about having legal representation. And finally, she said, her voice dropping slightly, I am filing a petition for a temporary protective order. It sits at the courthouse ready. The no trespass letter was step 1. This is step 2. It's contingent upon their next move. She swiveled her chair to face me directly. The second they attempt to file another fraudulent document, send another falsified email, or set foot on your road, I make one call. It triggers an immediate hearing before a judge. We present everything: the blueprint, the emails, the forgery, the police report, the utility fraud attempts, and we get a formal protective order that applies across state lines. She leaned forward. They think they're playing a family game, Maya. We are going to respond with corporate and criminal law. They will not know what hit them. I left her office an hour later, my hands full of copies, my mind numb but clear. The dread was gone. In its place was a cold, hard resolve. When I got back to my car, I saw I had a text from Rachel. Rachel, running social surveillance. You need to see this. She'd sent a screenshot. My mother hadn't made a new post. She had commented on an old family friend's post, someone named Barbara, who'd apparently shared the nursery mood board picture. Barbara's post. So glad Ethan and Amanda have a safe place to go. You must be so excited to be a grandmother, Patricia. My mother's reply, posted 1 hour ago. We are. We're so grateful our children will be safe up there. Moving day is coming together beautifully. Family is everything. I stared at the words. Up there. Not at Maya's house. Not at the A-frame. Not even in high timber. Just up there. A vague, depersonalized, unclaimed territory. It was the language of annexation. It was a fait accompli, a thing already done. She was, in her own passive-aggressive, socially acceptable way, declaring victory. I saved the screenshot, forwarded it to Victoria, who replied within seconds. Got it. Added to file, I sat in my car in Victoria's parking lot, engine running for heat, and stared at the snow-covered main street of high timber. I was walled in now. The locks were solid. The legal file was thick. The administrative infrastructure was frozen. But they were still probing, still looking for a crack. The driveway camera and the porch camera were good. But what about the rest of the property? The side lot where the trees were thick? The mailbox cluster at the end of the road where my P.O. box sat? I was a strategist. I needed more data. I opened my laptop right there in the car, using my phone as a hotspot. I didn't go to a security store website. I went to a hunting and outdoor supply site. I ordered a small, battery-powered trail camera. Waterproof, motion-activated, camouflaged in a bark pattern. It had geofencing capability. If anything crossed the perimeter I set, my phone would ping. I would mount it in a pine tree overlooking the mailbox cluster and the side lot. If anything or anyone crossed that threshold, I would know. I closed the laptop, looked at my phone, went to settings, lock screen, emergency contacts. The list had been the same for 10 years. ICE, 1. Mom, Isa, 2. Dad. My finger hovered over the red delete button. This was the last thread. The reflexive childhood instinct that if I were broken, bleeding, or unconscious on the side of a road, they were the ones to call. They were the ones who would save me. But they weren't. They were the emergency. I pressed the button. Deleted Mom. Pressed it again. Deleted Dad. The list was empty. I tapped Add New Contact. Scrolled until I found the entry I'd made that morning. ICE, Victoria Hayes. I clicked Done, locked my phone. The new directive sat there, invisible but active. I would not be ambushed. The person to call when I was in trouble was no longer my family. It was my attorney. December 30th, 2:11 a.m. The pressure cooker doesn't wait for business hours. It detonates in the dead of night. I was in a deep, exhausted sleep when the new alert tone, the one I'd set just for the geofence on the trail camera, sliced through the silence. It wasn't the polite ping of my driveway camera. It was a harsh, digital shriek. I was out of bed before I was fully conscious, my heart hammering. My phone's screen was blindingly bright in the dark room. Geofence alert, perimeter breach, mailbox cluster. I opened the TrailCam app with shaking hands. The feed was grainy, washed in the alien green of night vision, but the image was undeniable. A dark sedan, not the SUV from before, something smaller, more subtle, was idling on the gravel shoulder next to the community mailbox cluster. Its engine was a faint rumble, exhaust fogging in the cold. The driver's door opened. My father stepped out. He wasn't in a suit. He was in a dark coat and jeans, his face pale and grim in the infrared light. He looked around carefully, up and down the deserted mountain road. He thought he was invisible. He walked not to the outgoing mail slot, but directly to my P.O. box. Box number 428. He had a stack of thick white business envelopes in his hand. He didn't have a key. He didn't need one. One by one, he forced them through the narrow mail slot, jamming them into the locked box with increasing aggression. It was a violation, a physical act of force. He was planting them, serving me in the dead of night, creating a paper trail that would show he had delivered documents to my address. He jammed the last envelope through, smoothed his coat, and got back in the car. The sedan pulled away slowly, its taillights vanishing down the pass road. I sat in my dark living room, wrapped in a blanket, and watched the recording 3 more times. I did not go back to bed. At 6 a.m., just as the sky was turning a bruised gray, I put on my boots and my parka, drove the half-mile down to the mailbox cluster. The air was so cold it hurt to breathe. My breath came out in thick clouds. I stood in front of box 428, put my key in the lock. It stuck, blocked by the wad of paper inside. I forced it. The small metal door swung open. 3 thick white envelopes spilled out onto the snow. They weren't addressed. They were just folded, with Maya Richardson written on the outside in my father's precise handwriting. I sat in my car, engine running for warmth, and opened the first envelope. Household member affidavit. It was a form, official-looking, with corporate letterhead I didn't recognize, addressed to my homeowner's insurance company. It was a declaration stating that Ethan Richardson and Amanda Richardson were now full-time residents of the property at Kestrel Ridge and were to be added to my homeowner's policy as additional household members. At the bottom, it was signed, Robert Richardson, property manager. I opened the second envelope, nearly identical. This one was addressed to something called the High Timber Homeowners Association, a body that did not exist. He was inventing an HOA just so he could file paperwork with it. He was building an entire fictional bureaucracy to support his claims. The third envelope was a simple letter typed and signed by him. To whom it may concern. This letter serves as formal notice that, as property manager for Halcyon Pine LLC's Kestrel Ridge property, I have taken the following steps to ensure the security and proper insurance coverage of the asset on behalf of the family stakeholders. 1. Addition of primary residence to homeowner's policy. 2. Notification to local HOA of occupancy change. 3. Coordination with utility providers for billing consolidation. These actions are in the best interest of all parties and ensure compliance with local regulations. Sincerely, Robert J. Richardson, Property Manager, Halcyon Pine, LLC. I didn't drive back to the house. I sat there in the cold gray dawn at the side of the road and pulled out my phone. I took high-resolution photographs of every single page, every word, every fraudulent signature. Then I went into the TrailCam app, downloaded the video file, time-stamped 2:11 a.m. to 2:13 a.m., the clip of him forcing envelopes into my mailbox. I opened a new email to Victoria. Victoria, he's done it. My father planted fraudulent documents in my P.O. box at 2:11 this morning. I have video of him doing it, attaching the video file and photos of the documents. He is actively manufacturing evidence and claiming to be property manager of my LLC. What is our move? I attached everything and hit send. My phone buzzed with a reply before I'd even put the car in drive. It was 7:08 a.m. This is the last piece we needed, Maya. He's created his own evidence loop, planting documents and then discovering them. This is the act of a criminal, not a father. I am filing the emergency motion now, attaching the video and affidavits as evidence of ongoing fraud. He is done. I drove back to the house. My entire body was humming with a cold, clear, righteous energy. The pressure was no longer in my chest. It was now fully, completely on them. I made coffee, watched the sun hit the valley, waited. At 11:52 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. It's done. Emergency motion filed with video stills and fraudulent affidavits attached. County clerk stamped it before noon. The petition for protective order is now active and on a judge's desk. Next time they breathe on you, it will be executed. It was a victory, clean, swift, decisive. At 12:05 p.m., my phone buzzed again. A text from a number I had not silenced but had not heard from in days. Mom, we tried everything the nice way, Maya. You left us no choice. The timing was terrifying. Had they been notified by the court already? Or was this the next pre-planned beat in their psychological war? It didn't matter. The language, the nice way, the locksmith, the screaming on my porch, the forged tenancy agreement, the 2 a.m. covert operation to stuff fraudulent documents in my mailbox. This was their nice way. You left us no choice. The final hollow anthem of the perpetrator. You made me do this. My moral clarity was absolute. I was not angry. I was not sad. I was finished. I did not reply. I did not block her. I screenshotted the text, forwarded it without comment to Victoria. Her reply came 1 minute later. Acknowledged. Added to petition as direct threat. Do not reply. I silenced the thread. My mother, my father, my brother. Muted. The phone rang almost immediately. My heart jumped, but it was Gran Eleanor. I answered, my voice suddenly soft. Hi, Gran. I just got off the phone with your mother. Her voice was a crackle of pure, undiluted fury. No preamble. She's in hysterics, utterly hysterical, sobbing about how you filed a motion and you're using lawyers to ruin the family at New Year's. She's right, I said, my voice calm. I did. Good. Gran shouted, and I heard a glass clink. Ice, probably whiskey, even though it was barely past noon. I told her. I said, Patricia, you reap what you sow, and you planted a field of snakes. There was a pause. Ice clinked again. And then I told her something else. Something I should have told you first, but I didn't want to pressure you while you were fighting them. My stomach dropped. Gran? I'm leaving you my house, Maya. The Victorian on Oak Street in Maple Bridge. It's in my will. Has been for 10 years. I sat down on the sofa, my legs suddenly weak. Gran, It's worth about $600,000, and your parents know. The world tilted. What? Robert came to me last summer, July, sat in my kitchen and said, Mother, if you're leaving the Oak Street house to Maya, she should help Ethan now while he needs it. Fair is fair. Family is family. Gran's voice was acid. I told him absolutely not. That house is yours because you're the one who visits. You're the one who calls. You're the one who cared. He left furious. Didn't speak to me for 2 months. I was still processing, trying to fit the pieces together. Gran, the mountain house. They weren't just trying to take it. They were trying to offset it, Gran finished. Exactly. Robert sees it as, Maya's getting a $600,000 house from Gran, therefore we can take the $400,000 mountain house. It's only fair. It balances out. The entire thing snapped into focus with crystalline clarity. October 15th. My father researches elk rest properties. Not random. Not spontaneous. He'd just found out, or confirmed, that Gran was leaving me the Oak Street house. In his mind, I was getting $600,000 I didn't earn. Never mind that I visited Gran every month, that I was the only one who called, that I was the only grandchild who cared. So he found a property in my price range, built a budget using my money, planned the rooms for Ethan's life, and waited for me to get my bonus. In his mind, it was fair. I was getting Gran's house for free, so I owed Ethan a house now. It was just redistribution of family assets. They knew all along, I whispered. They knew, Gran confirmed. And Maya, I've already updated my will, added a clause. If any family member contests my will or harasses you in any way regarding your inheritance, their share goes to charity. $0. Robert gets nothing. Patricia gets nothing. Ethan gets nothing. I told my lawyer. It's ironclad. They can't touch you now. My throat was tight. Gran, you earned it, kiddo. Both houses. All of it. You earned it by being a good person, by showing up, by not being like them. Her voice softened. Now go enjoy your mountain. New Year's Eve came quiet and cold. I was alone in the house by choice. Rachel, David, and Jordan had offered to drive back up, but I'd told them to stay in the city. I need to think, I'd said. I'm okay. I promise. It was 3 p.m. when my phone rang with an unknown high-timbre number. I assumed it was Victoria calling from a different line. I answered. Hello? There was a pause, then, quietly, Maya, it's Amanda. I froze. Please don't hang up, she said quickly, her voice shaking. I stayed silent, listening. I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you months ago. I walked to the window, looked out at the valley, waited. In October, Amanda began, her words tumbling out. After Ethan lost his job, his third consulting gig in 2 years, your father called him, told him he'd been watching your career and that you were about to get a big bonus. He said he'd found a property in Elkrest, perfect for us, perfect for the baby. She took a shaky breath. He told Ethan, Maya's getting this bonus. She'll want to help family. We'll frame it as a gift to her, a mountain getaway. But really, it's for you and the baby. She doesn't need a house. She's single. But you need to start your family somewhere safe. My hand tightened on the phone. I told Ethan it was wrong, Amanda continued, and now she was crying. I told him we couldn't just take your money, your house, your life. He said, it's what family does. She'll understand. Dad says she owes us anyway because of Gran's will. So Ethan had known about the will too. Your mom kept calling me, Amanda said. Amanda, you're carrying the Richardson heir. Maya doesn't need a 3-bedroom house. Think of the baby. Think of Ethan's pride. This is what families do. Her voice broke. I went along. I'm so ashamed, Maya. I went along because I was tired and scared, and I wanted Ethan to have something, anything that would make him feel like a man again. But that night, on your porch, when I saw the deputy, when I realized we'd brought a locksmith, she sobbed once, hard. I saw us. I really saw us. We were criminals. We were trying to steal your home. And for what? Ethan's ego? Your parents' control? I can't do it anymore, she whispered. I won't raise Sophie. That's what we named her. I won't raise my daughter in a family that does this. There was a long silence. Maya, they're not done. Last night, your dad and Ethan were in the kitchen until 2 a.m. I heard Robert on the phone with someone, a lawyer maybe. He kept saying things like adverse possession and squatters' rights and proof of abandonment. My blood ran cold. What does that mean? I don't know, Amanda said. But they're planning something legal. They think if they can prove you've abandoned the property or that they've been living there, they can, I don't know, claim some kind of right to it. She took another breath. I'm leaving, Maya. I left this morning. Took Sophie and drove to my mom's in Vermont. I filed for divorce yesterday. Ethan he's still with them, living in their basement, blaming you for ruining his life. Your parents haven't spoken to me since I walked away on Christmas Eve, but I had to warn you. I owed you that. Amanda, I said quietly. Thank you. I'm sorry, she whispered, for all of it. You deserved better. You deserve that house. You deserve peace. The line went quiet for a moment. Good luck, Maya. I hope you're happy there. She hung up. I immediately called Victoria, left an urgent voicemail. Amanda Richardson just called. They're planning something involving adverse possession and abandonment claims. Can you call me back? 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Maya! Victoria's voice was sharp. I got your message. Here's what you need to know. Adverse possession is a legal doctrine where someone can claim property through continuous, open, and hostile occupation over a period of years, usually 5 to 10, depending on the state. But I haven't abandoned it, I said. I'm here. Exactly, which is why it won't work. But they might try to argue it, or threaten to, as leverage. The bigger concern is this. They might try to file a formal legal claim, a countersuit, something that forces you into expensive, protracted litigation. She paused. I already filed the emergency motion, but I want you to be prepared. If they file something, we'll be in court within a week. I need you ready. I'm ready, I said. The call came on January 2nd. Maya, it's Victoria. They filed. My heart sank. Filed what? A petition for declaratory relief, filed by Robert Richardson, not as your father, but as family representative. Yell. It's a civil claim arguing that Halcyon Pine, LLC, is a sham entity, that you used family funds to purchase the property, and that the family has equitable interest in it. That's insane. It's desperate, Victoria corrected, and it will likely fail. But it's expensive, slow, and designed to bleed you. Legal fees, court dates, stress. It's a classic SLAP tactic, strategic lawsuit against public participation. They're trying to make defending yourself so costly that you give up and settle. What do? We fight, and we countersue. Harassment, fraud, trespass, emotional distress. We don't just defend. We make them bleed. She paused. There's an emergency hearing set for January 6th at 2 p.m. The judge will decide whether the case can proceed. You need to be there. Bring everything, timeline, screenshots, receipts, the video from the mailbox. We're telling your story. January 6th, 2 p.m. The Elk Rest County Courthouse was small. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, the faint smell of old paper and floor wax. I sat at the defendant's table with Victoria. Across the aisle at the plaintiff's table were Robert, Patricia, and Ethan, along with their attorney. The attorney was the same man from Christmas Eve, Mr. Harrison, the mediator who'd shown up with them on my porch. Amanda was not there. She'd kept her word. She'd left. My father looked certain, righteous, like a man who believed he was on the side of justice. My mother looked smaller than I remembered, older. Ethan stared at the table, his jaw tight. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s, sharp-eyed, with steel gray hair pulled back in a bun. All rise. We stood. Be seated. This is case number 2026CV0847, Robert Richardson et al. Versus Halcyon Pine LLC. Mr. Harrison, you may proceed. Harrison stood, adjusting his tie. Your Honor, this case concerns a troubling situation in which Ms. Maya Richardson, suffering from documented mental health issues and exhibiting increasingly erratic behavior, impulsively purchased a property without family consultation using bonus money the family had expected would benefit all members. I felt Victoria stiffen beside me, but she didn't interrupt. Ms. Richardson has subsequently and irrationally cut off all contact with her parents and brother, Harrison continued, refusing to allow them to visit the property or to assist her in managing it. This behavior is concerning and suggests an incapacity to properly manage the property. We ask the court to appoint a family conservator. Objection. Victoria stood, her voice like ice. Counsel is arguing facts not in evidence. There is no documentation of mental health issues. This is slander. The judge looked at Harrison. Mr. Harrison, do you have documentation supporting claims of mental incapacity? Harrison faltered. Your Honor, the behavior speaks for itself. That's not documentation. Proceed with facts, counselor. Harrison cleared his throat, flustered. He continued with the argument about family funds and equitable interest, but he was off balance now. When he finished, the judge turned to Victoria. Ms. Hayes? Victoria stood. She didn't go to the podium. She stayed at the table, one hand resting on a thick file. Your Honor, this is not a family dispute. This is textbook attempted theft through fraudulent means. She opened the file. I am presenting to the court. First, emails dated October 18th, showing that Mr. Robert Richardson researched this exact property and planned to use Mrs. Richardson's bonus to purchase it, not for her, but for his son Ethan. before Ms. Richardson even knew she was getting a bonus. She slid the emails toward the clerk, who passed them to the judge. Second, a spreadsheet created by Mr. Richardson, budgeting the purchase using Maya's bonus with all expenses assigned to M and all occupancy assigned to E plus A, Ethan and Amanda Richardson. More documents. Third, a forged tenancy agreement filed with the county bearing a falsified signature, Maya M. Richardson, when in fact Ms. Richardson has no middle initial. This is felony fraud. The judge's expression sharpened. She was reading the documents carefully. Fourth, a police report from December 23rd documenting that the plaintiffs arrived at Ms. Richardson's property with a locksmith and attempted to forcibly enter after being explicitly told they were not welcome. Victoria paused. And fifth, Your Honor, and this is the most damning video evidence from January 30th at 2:11 a.m., showing Mr. Robert Richardson planting fraudulent documents in Miss Richardson's mailbox, including affidavits claiming to be property manager of an LLC he has no legal connection to. She held up a still from the trail cam footage, grainy but clear. My father's face pale in the infrared, shoving envelopes into my P.O. box. This is not a concerned family, Your Honor. This is a calculated months-long campaign to defraud Ms. Richardson of property she purchased legally with money she earned. The courtroom was silent. The judge looked at Harrison. Mr. Harrison, do you have a response to these allegations? Harrison stood slowly. He looked at the documents, at the video still, at my father, whose face had gone purple. Your Honor, family relationships are complex. The plaintiffs believed they were acting in Ms. Richardson's best interest. Breaking into her home with a locksmith is in her best interest, the judge interrupted. They were concerned for her safety. At 8 p.m. on Christmas Eve, with suitcases in a crib? Harrison had no answer. The judge looked at me. Ms. Richardson, would you like to make a statement? I stood. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. Your Honor, I earned the bonus that paid for this house through 6 months of 60-hour work weeks. I purchased the property legally under an LLC I created to protect my privacy. I did not ask my family for money. I did not ask for their help. I bought a home where I could finally feel safe. I looked at my father. When I posted one picture of my new home, my family decided, without asking me, that my brother and his wife would be moving in. When I said no, they brought a locksmith. When that failed, they forged documents, attempted mail fraud, and tried to take control of my utilities by claiming I was incompetent. My voice didn't waver. I love my family, but I will not be stolen from. I will not be erased. This house is mine. I earned it. And I'm asking the court to protect my right to live in peace. I sat down. The judge leaned back in her chair. She looked at the documents for a long moment. I've seen enough, she said finally. Mr. Harrison, your client's petition for declaratory relief is denied. There is no evidence Ms. Richardson used family funds. There is no evidence of incapacity. There is overwhelming evidence of harassment and fraud by your clients. She turned to face Robert, Patricia, and Ethan directly. Further, I am granting an immediate protective order. Robert Richardson, Patricia Richardson, and Ethan Richardson are hereby barred from the property in question, any contact with Ms. Richardson, directly or through third parties, and any attempts to access utilities, mail, or related services associated with the property. She banged her gavel. Violations will result in immediate arrest. This order is enforceable across state lines. Case dismissed. Court adjourned. Victoria squeezed my shoulder. You did it. Across the aisle, my father's face was a mask of rage. My mother was crying. Real tears this time, I thought. Or maybe not. I couldn't tell anymore. Ethan was staring at the table, his hands clenched into fists. They filed out of the courtroom in silence. I waited until they were gone. Then I walked out into the cold January air. The sky was gray. The mountains were white. I breathed. The first free breath, 1 year later, New Year's Eve. The house was full. 15 people crowded into the great room. Rachel, David, and Jordan, of course. Tom and Lisa from down the ridge, 3 other neighbors I'd gotten to know over the year, Victoria Hayes, who'd become not just my attorney, but my friend, and Gran Eleanor, who'd driven up yesterday despite the snow, declaring at 85 that she wasn't missing the party for anything, and James. James, who I'd met in March at a book reading in High Timber, who worked remotely as a software engineer and had been looking for mountain property himself when we'd started talking, who was kind and funny and had never once asked me to be anything other than exactly who I was. We'd been dating for 6 months. Slow, careful, good. The house smelled like roasted chicken and fresh bread. Music played, something jazzy and warm. The fire crackled. Snow fell softly outside the windows. At 11:30, the motion sensor pinged. The room went quiet. Everyone looked at me. I checked the camera app on my phone. 1 car, small sedan, not an SUV. I zoomed in. The driver was alone. A woman, getting out carefully, lifting a toddler from a car seat in the back. Amanda. I opened the door before she could knock. The camera was recording. Victoria was in the room behind me, just in case. Maya, Amanda said softly. She looked different, thinner, but stronger somehow. Her dark hair was shorter. Sophie, bundled in a pink snowsuit, clutched her mother's neck and stared at me with wide brown eyes. I know I have no right to be here, Amanda said. I know what we did was unforgivable, but I needed to say in person. She took a breath. I'm sorry. For all of it. For going along, for not stopping them sooner, for making you feel unsafe in your own home. I looked at her, at the baby, at the woman who'd walked away from my family and built a new life. I left Ethan, she continued. Divorce was finalized in October. He's still in Maple Bridge, still with Robert and Patricia, still blaming you for everything. She shifted Sophie on her hip. Your parents haven't spoken to me since Christmas Eve, and that's okay. I don't want them in Sophie's life. I don't want her to learn that love is control. She held up her phone, showed me a photo. Sophie, a little older, laughing in a park. This is her now, 18 months. She'll never know that family. She'll never learn those patterns. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. I just wanted you to know. You were right. About everything. About boundaries. About choosing who gets to stay. I learned that from watching you fight. I was quiet for a long moment. Behind me, I could feel my friends waiting. Victoria, James, Gran. Thank you for the apology, Amanda, I said finally. And thank you for protecting Sophie. You made the right choice. I paused. But I can't have you in my life. I need my boundaries to stay whole. Do you understand? Amanda nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I just needed you to know. You deserve to be happy here. She turned to walk back to her car, then paused, looked back. They're not fighting anymore, by the way. Your parents. After the court case, something broke. Ethan's in the basement playing video games. Your dad barely leaves his study. Your mom... She shrugged sadly. Your mom lost all her friends. Everyone saw the Facebook posts and then found out what really happened. She's alone now. She shifted Sophie again. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. You shouldn't. I'm telling you because you won. You built something real, and they destroyed themselves trying to take it. She walked to her car. I watched the taillights disappear down the mountain. I closed the door, turned back to my friends. Victoria raised an eyebrow. You okay? Yeah, I said. I really am. At 11:58, everyone gathered for the countdown. Champagne glasses were filled. The fire crackled. Someone turned up the music. I stood on the hearth, glass in hand, and the room quieted. I want to say something. Everyone turned to look at me. 2 years ago, I bought this house. I thought I was buying silence, buying escape. I looked around the room at the faces of the people I'd chosen. Turns out I was buying space. Space for laughter, for chosen family, for life. Gran raised her glass from her chair by the fire. I learned something, I continued. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. Doors I get to open for people who respect them. Doors I get to close on people who don't. I raised my glass. Thank you for being the people I opened the door for. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being home. To doors, Rachel called out. To choices, David added. To home, Gran finished, her voice strong. To home, everyone shouted. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. At midnight, the room erupted in cheers and hugs and laughter. James pulled me close, kissed me softly. Happy New Year, he whispered. Happy New Year, I whispered back. Later, when the party had quieted and people were sleeping in the guest rooms or had driven home, I stepped out onto the deck. The string lights glowed warm against the dark. The valley spread below, 1,000 lights like stars fallen to earth. James joined me, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. Cold out here. Yeah, I said, leaning into him. But it's mine. He kissed my temple. We stood there in comfortable silence. Behind us, the house was warm, full of the people I'd chosen, the family I'd built, the life I'd claimed. January 1st, morning. I woke alone. James had left early for a work deadline, leaving a note on the pillow. Coffee's made. Love you. Jay. The house was quiet. My friends were still asleep in the guest rooms. Gran was probably awake but reading in bed, as was her habit. I made a cup of coffee and walked out onto the deck in my warmest coat, wrapping myself in the green cashmere blanket Rachel had given me. The sun was rising over the valley, turning everything gold. I checked my phone. One text from Gran, sent at 6 a.m. Proud of you, kiddo. Happy New Year. You built something real. I smiled, typed back, Thanks, Gran. Love you. I opened the journal I'd started keeping, a new habit suggested by my therapist. Yes, I'd finally started seeing one. I wrote, Year 2, the mountain I claimed. It was never about the house. It was about choosing who gets to stay, and I chose well. I learned, silence can be full, not empty. Family is who shows up, not who shares blood. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're self-respect. Love without respect isn't love, it's control. I am not a resource to be allocated. I am a person to be cherished. And I learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is build a door strong enough to keep the wrong people out. This mountain taught me that peace isn't something you find. It's something you build, one boundary at a time, one no at a time, one choice at a time. I am home. Finally. Completely. Home. I closed the journal, set it on the small table beside my chair, picked up my coffee, watched the sun climb higher, painting the snow pink and gold. From inside, I heard laughter, Rachel's voice, David saying something that made her laugh harder. The smell of bacon drifted out from the kitchen. Gran was cooking breakfast. James would be back tonight. We'd watch movies by the fire. Tomorrow, I'd return to work at Redwood Meridian, another campaign launching, another challenge to tackle. But for now, I sat on my deck, wrapped in warmth, surrounded by love I'd chosen, and I was home.